So this is YouAttest. We are an identity auditing tool, and you'll see much bigger implication usage. Backgrounds. Ashley and Garrett have been together as forming companies for over 10 years. Many of you might know of a company called SecureAuth. That was my original patents on there. And then one of my first employees that helped me move that along was Ashley. So we have a very strong background in identities. I myself have worked for companies like RSA, IBM, Cisco, and have 13 patents in identity, two-factor, and security. But the most impressive part of my background is being born and raised on the south side of Chicago and then going to University of Texas at 17 and not getting myself killed. So that's what I'm very proud of with my Chicago accent. Please
I think we're all happy that you did not get yourself killed.
That's right. You go to the University of Texas in 1982 and talk like a Southside Chicagoan, and you see how you work out. All right, so I will try to moderate my natural, and I say that I'll try to moderate my natural Chicago accent, and Ashley has a nice, very flat tone. So we'll share the presentation skills. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm
Ashley.
Californian, so it's all good. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and thanks again, Robin.
We should, Ashley, I'm sorry, that was rude. We should talk about, we take diversity very seriously at YouAttest, okay? And we are offering, you'll see this product, everyone out there, that this is a product that is designed for the risk manager, both the internal, and now we're signing up a lot of partners. So we are onboarding risk managers owned and managed by women or from other non-traditional represented communities for free. So we will onboard you, and we put our money where their mouth is. And Ashley knows this. We have traditionally give higher rates for referrals from women and minority-owned risk and compliance advisors, and we have. Take it away, Ashley.
Really exciting. We're going to follow up with you about that.
Yeah, that's how we work.
That was actually our first referral with a woman-owned business. So.
Yeah, they were ready to move, and we moved with them. We've done some webinars with them. They're great. Oh, good.
Perfect. All right, thanks again, everyone. So tonight we're going to talk about the problem of siloed resources for identity security and compliance. Again, we are YouAttest. We're the leader in identity governance for security and compliance. So identity auditing and the problem of siloed resources. So we're going to learn exactly what siloed resources are and how they affect the identity audit. We're also going to go over how siloed resources leave the identity audit incomplete. A lot of people just ignore these siloed resources, and you just can't. There's ramifications if you don't. We're going to go over actual use cases, so we're not just throwing verbiage at you. We're going to talk about real life examples where the orphan accounts and siloed resources have been used by hackers to inflict damage on the actual enterprise. We're going to learn how to actually include the identities and all the permissions from both the siloed and the other resources. So the agenda. So what is the mandate for a secured enterprise? So we're going to go over the introductions. We're going to talk about the problems with identity for a secure enterprise, how it's mandated by compliance measures. Again, we're going to give real world examples with the problems with orphaned accounts. We have some case studies. We're going to do an overview as well as the demo of YouAttest. And of course, we'll do the Q&A because we want to hear from you. So the problems. So there's a lack of identity store of record. We hear this a lot with our prospects as well as our customers. You know, some people have Azure ID, Okta, but they don't have a true source of truth. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the lack of third-party applications leveraging primary authentications. So on-prem AD, Azure AD, etc. Accounts not being disabled or revoked or removed timely. So, you know, lots of people leave the company. Sometimes people forget, you know, Bob had access to this, Sue had access to this, and they're not removing those accounts, which is a huge problem. We're going to talk about when accounts are reviewed and how the rules are leveraged. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Garrett.
All right. So what's sad in our community, in the identity community, sure, I take myself, I can take my risk manager partners, and we can talk about identities and ghost accounts and orphan accounts, and we all know. I mean, everyone at that table, everyone at that bar, everyone at the golf tee, they understand these are problems. Okay, problem is organizations might know the problems, but they're not paying attention until they get fined. Okay. And I can go through use cases. Ashley and I did a bunch of webinars in healthcare and listed out a whole bunch of fines, etc. The bottom line is this, guys. It's in the frameworks that we should be reviewing the identities, and we should be quantifying the accesses. And what you'll see, and what I loved what Robin kicked off with, is people are doing this. They're trying to do it through things like spreadsheets and scripts, etc. But the real problem, and every time we get into the account, and we'll talk about this, is what we're really seeing is the reviewers the review is being done by admin or admin personnel. That's not an access review. We got to push this stuff out to the field, out to the actual managers. Take it away. Next. Okay, orphan accounts, straight out. Let's start doing terms. This is a no-kill audience. We know what orphan accounts, but literally think about what it is we have former employees, or we have is a lot of movers, right? I mean, we have a lot of dynamicists in our company, and they were in this group, and now they're in that group, but they're still staying resident. Who likes orphan accounts? Raise your hand. Hackers love orphan accounts, because orphan accounts don't have their passwords changed, and they give them time to hack and to start their abilities for lateral movement and of course adding privileges to those accounts. Next. Okay, so it's real simple here, guys. What we're seeing, and I'm going to go into this more, is and nothing wrong with it. I started my career at companies IBM and Cisco, and respect the hell out of the network world, and I did some slides you'll see talk about integration into zero trust and micro segmentation. But when we talk about the cloud, y'all, we're talking identities. Okay, that's the buffer zone between what is access and what is not. And that's where something that hasn't been done very well in the last 20 years, access reviews, becomes way more important. I got some stats we're going to reveal later on that. Keep going. Okay, so what we need to do is implement the control. Two worlds. My background with patents, all that, is straight out engineering, straight out coding, straight out whatever. Okay, and I created a control. I created a two-factor SSO product from scratch, around the world development, etc. Okay, I did that, and I had many of my friends who are CISOs, and I never really understood what people were talking about when they said controls. And when I mean a control, I'm saying what we need to do is we need to have outside the functionality of the provision and outside the functionality of the light side management, a control on what those identities are actually having access to. There's amazing numbers being said right now. As we'll say it later, but how much of these entities that we are provisioning, we are functionally provisioning, we're functionally managing the life cycle, but are orphaned in where they are and whatever, especially in the cloud resources. Next. Let's get to the fun stuff. Take it away, Ashley. We'll start with on-premise resources and hacks.
Sure. So the recent issues with account compromises. So the recent hacks, so stale service accounts have been compromised. So that has led to nearly 100% environment takeover from ransomware. So this can start with just a standard account compromise, and it can escalate all the way to a privileged account takeover. So hackers will look for any holes in your identity management, whether that be domain admin accounts, root accounts, service accounts, local accounts, default built-in accounts. So this is why automation and YouAttest is so important as far as making sure all the identities are accounted for.
It's nothing better to bring this up in ISC squared. Put that slide back up. Teams, what any risk manager is telling you is that privilege escalation is what it's about. Get on to any account, get up to get some privilege escalation. Classic cyber kill chain. I'm
going to tell you something.
Yeah.
The reason a bunch of us are sitting here with our mouths zipped shut is because we all know where each other works. And we all know when businesses play games and they'll name a group, not important, do not look here. And then you examine what that group does and you find out that that particular group gives root access, or that particular group is a euphemism for sysadmin. So the only reason that you have quiet amongst us is because we're all sitting here shaking from the truth of it.
Shaking the truth. So we better get to how I'll solve this.
I can tell you that it very quickly, just one poorly clustered account took one location I was at from having, 13 or 14 exceptions to 75,000 exceptions in a matter of 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Simply because it took an overlooked access group that was being distributed across multiple domains and VPCs on a per client basis. So we've all lived this.
So the truth of the matter is, we're pretty damn good about provisioning resources and provisioning privileges. We're not so good about reviewing what we've actually done. That's the truth of the matter.
I think we're not so good at making sure that the information to interpret it is reaching the correct authorizing business owner, which I really liked about this app.
Nothing helped me more in my career than working the support line in our companies, which was also the admin group too. I mean, most privileges get changed, not from a good execution of, NIST PRAC-6, proper implementation of least privilege, but instead someone screaming loud enough and demanding that they get that privilege for that group. Which leads me to the next one. Palo Alto, Unit 42, is basically done a survey of 24,000 entities and stated that 99% of cloud privileges are over permissive. What does that mean? That means that we are giving access to these identities and we're not reviewing them. That's literally what they're saying. And review them in 2 ways. What are the existing privileges, and how accurate is that privilege to what that role should be today? Okay? That's why next we're going to talk about some other problems with identities and where we're going. Here's a lot of my slides don't come from me. What I do, and that's why I kicked off about working with risk managers and love working with risk managers of every type, because they're the ones feeding me this information. They say, Garret, we use YouAttest, my wife's name. We use YouAttest. It's late, right, Ashley? It's all good. I know I'm doing okay if I get Ashley to laugh, so that's always a goal of mine. So we get that risk manager are telling us straight out that what's going on in their accounts is simply over this is where I look at it. I look at the power of revisioning, and the power of throwing on application is surpassed the normal organization's ability to actually review what they have. And this is where I'm going. I'm really big on this term, democratization. Okay, not that I can pronounce things because I'm from the South Side of Chicago. But what I mean by that is large organizations have a reasonable ability to implement IGA through the tools. And there's some great tools. I'm a SailPoint trained individual, okay? Took training in it. It's a fantastic tool. It has all your abilities of provision and lifecycle management, revocation, and attestation. Okay, now go to your average company under the size of 2,500 or 100. We talk to them all the time at the ISAC shows and say, all right, so how you doing with your provisioning? How you doing with lifecycle management? How you doing with your SailPoint module? They say, we can't afford that here. Okay, Let's address that. Let's address how we can democratize the ability of not only provisioning and not only providing SSO, not only providing two-factor, all things that I would argue are pretty well handled today. But what it hasn't been handled is the attestation and the account reviews of the permissions granted. Next. Okay, and I could not bring this up in accounts and permissions without talking zero trust. I was going to throw some quotes about some leaders in this industry, and I took them off because I don't want to be offensive, and I don't think there's anything beneficial to be offensive about this. But I'll look everyone in the eye right here and say it's not zero trust without identities. It's just not.
Right.
And I got a bunch of patents on this about that I wrote a zero trust product over at a company and et cetera. And I said the hallmark of your zero trust is identity, and knowing the identity and then doing what we're doing pretty decently in the web world. And I mean it. I love the products of Okta and Zero ID and Ping and Chump Cloud. They do a real damn good job of enforcing identities in the web world. It hasn't been done very well in the legacy L3, L4 people in the network world. That's why, next slide, we did a webinar with these gentlemen from Guardicore and now Akamai Guardicore, and we were in lockstep agreement. Said straight out, what are we gonna do in zero trust? We gotta enforce identity-based policies. We gotta know who is on our systems the same way you know who's on your Salesforce, the same way you know who's on your Outlook and your G Suite. We got to know in the segment what the user is, and then we got to force it. And
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I'm actually going to pull in a comment from Joan Ross, but I have this question too. So, you know, one of the issues is being able to anticipate how much activity you should see on an account. It's reasonable for certain accounts to actually only be used twice a year because they only need to log in twice a year. Some accounts should be logging in a dozen times a day. Other accounts should be logging in at the end of every quarter. Do you have any facility to not just recognize that an account has been dormant, because, you know, dormant accounts happen, but to challenge why it's dormant and then retain what you would expect to see from that account?
I'm a big V1, V2, V3 person. What we've been doing for our customers, the V1 on that is we have been giving usage reports through our product out through manual processes, but pushing out that information down to the level of managers. Okay, this is the last log on, this is the last log off, etc. What we are also working on in V2s and V3s of the products is coming up with models that represent what that group's normal usage is.
Right.
And that's just a data collection. So that's the way I see that. I personally built a lot of models over science. So it is about baselining and then giving that type of information. We have seen this. This is something that we've learned a lot. Like we did this, Ashley led this huge project with 29 countries, 1,900 reviewers, okay? And the risk manager is a really talented woman. And she was like, Garret, you can give me as many metrics as you want, but you know who knows best is the managers. And what I want out of your product, Garret, is I want it to be able to push down to the most micro level of managers so they can review the usage of their users. And I was like, rock and roll, let's go. And that's what we did for her. So that's why we implemented it that way as a V1 before the models. Next. Case studies. Oh, there's a part everyone loves. Okay, so just because I deal with lawyers too much, I won't be mentioning names, but I got these from my wonderful risk managers that I work with, okay? So let's talk healthcare. And guys, we did a whole couple of webinars on healthcare. Healthcare gets hacked a lot and I don't think they get hacked because they don't have good CISOs and they don't have good employees. They get hacked because of the tools that they have are so arcane and they don't integrate very well. And that's where we got our product ideas of the demo I'm going to show everyone is the siloed use cases, because the healthcare said, hey, I got this identity store of record, I got these apps, I got my admins on this, but I've got these 5 legacy systems that aren't tied in. Anyways, okay? So, but let's not, too broad or stroke too much. In this particular healthcare, which was a group out of Washington, D.C., rheumatology group, they simply weren't doing any access reviews at all. When they got fined, and they did get fined, it came out during the audit process that they were doing a damn good job of provisioning. They were giving access to the users and giving access to the right people, but they never ever rechecked one and if those accounts were still relevant and still needed access. And this is what's relevant. And I hate to motivate. I got a whole nother slide deck for a group this morning, and on the left-hand side, I put the number, the smallest concern is being fined. And then you go up the staircase, and then you got, basically threats to your reputation, IP threat, and then customer data. So
I love that you said the smallest issue is the fine, because
it really is.
I know companies that said we got fined and our stock went up. We don't care.
Yeah. Guys, this is a no-cal audience. We all know that hacks affect identity and identity companies. So we take those very seriously. I don't need to name names. Next.
No, you don't have to name names. We all just thought the names.
Yes, I know. Everyone knows.
Just had a mass groupthink right there.
Yes. There's absolutely no reason. Identities matter, and I feel for all of us in this industry that we need to protect, and we know we are targets. And we have that in healthcare, PHI. Come on, guys. Okay, defense scenario. And let me just say, obviously, the guys all deal with CMMC. We all know there's up in the air what the final regulations are. Doesn't mean they still are not going to be fined, et cetera, and that decisions won't be made based on the security scores. So this was a.
I need to say this.
Yeah.
From CMMC 1 to CMMC 2.0, we always had AC2 and AC3. We always had access control review. It's part of the baseline. So anybody who's saying, oh, now I got to do it, no, you're a liar. It was always part.
Access, and I like when you said it. And in this PRAC-4, it's just part and parcel of all these. It's just an access review, knowing what your identity is, attesting what your identity is, part and parcel. It's a baseline operation. And that's where we're saying it, and good companies do it. Good companies, big companies do it. I really not, preaching a choir to those guys. But we understand is that, some poor CISO takes over control of a 105,000 user company, and it's like, Garrett, I'd love to, implement the procedures and practices I was doing at the bigger companies. I just don't have the tool. I will show you that. But once again, what happened to our friends over at this Philadelphia-based contractor? And guys, I'm all for CMMC. I know there's people do whatever. No, it's supply chain. I mean, we don't have to go into the world events, et cetera, but the supply chain matters, and it matters a lot for defense contractors, and not looking over your privileged access. And let me just state right here, I know there's different auditors say different levels of review. The auditors that I'm working with straight out tell their customers straight out that they got to be reviewing their admin accounts monthly, and that anything less is simply not being responsible and looking at the things. And so having companies like this that have a decent quantifiable IAM system. I mean it. Azure's mature, Okta's mature, Ping One's mature. These are mature products. ForgeRock, these are mature products. There is no reason not to be doing that type of review for them. And then, handing out classified data. And will they get fined? I'm sure they will, but more relevantly in their sector, they're known for being hacked, which is above the fine scale. Next. Pharmaceuticals. we all know that they are great companies, great IP companies, and this is where I look at someone and say, what are you talking about? The fines are here, right? You know, and then you have the IP and et cetera. I mean, you're having your IP stolen and pulled from you. You're losing a heck of a lot more than anything that a HIPAA fuss could be by. So, here we go. This was actually discovered. This actual scenario of this pharmaceutical company out of the New Jersey area was discovered by one of my risk manager partners. And he said, hold it, guys, we have a problem here. We discovered that data was being exfiltrated, and what was being done? When any decent access we would sell, they had shared accounts, just shared admin accounts, and sharing the data and the privileges on these shared accounts. And that's the type of stuff that is just, once again, companies are pretty decent at provisioning accounts, but what has to be done is the governance. We have to overlook and say, hold it, who has access? Are individual users quantified for each of these accesses, and can we account for the access per user?
I have a question.
Yeah.
A lot of companies lie about the way they're provisioning accounts. So what they'll say, you know, we have single sign-on. All right. So you say you have single sign-on, but then you get to a jump box, or you are looking at Salesforce.com, and you find that in addition to these integrated accounts, we have all of these manually created IDs that do not track to the HR system, do not track to an employee ID, and are in fact just manually created accounts, which completely invalidate the whole principle of single sign-on. Do you have the capacity to just light that up like a Christmas tree and say you have an inconsistent provisioning practice?
Yeah,
You're allowing manual accounts to be created?
we have various ways to we have a way to quantify what you consider your identity store record is, and then contrast other systems to it. Okay, now I'll show that demo where I'll use it, and my demo is pretty straightforward. That I'm starting with the user ID, but it could start from any system, and make that your identity store record, and then contrast other systems to it to say whether the account is completely orphaned, or one of my favorite auditors, his name is Raj, it tells me is Garrett, what I'm looking for is not just the orphan accounts, it's him talking. I'm looking for, they're telling me that they've created some sort of topography that says these are my finance users. And then you give me these 8 siloed apps that are into finance, and the users don't reflect the groups that you're telling me of your identity store record. So that's a good transition, Ashley, to demo time. Let's just take it from there, okay?
All right, I am going to stop sharing then.
And
It's fun. You've got it? Yeah, he does.
Me presenter, and I am going to show a different screen than I did this morning, okay? Okay, let me go here.
I hope people are looking you up on LinkedIn, because I think that the average number of shared connections between you and everybody on the call right now is probably north of 20. We have all been, that's why I said there's a lot of zip lips on this call, because we've all been sitting elbow to elbow, and we really have lived what you're talking about.
This is
you
our
know, you're
lives,
showing
guys.
an email right now, right?
Yeah, no, there you go.
There you go.
And the good thing is, I don't have to swear at Zoom right now. I can swear to a different product, so it's all good. Okay, this is our dashboard. This is our dashboard, and what I want everyone to understand: this is a dashboard designed for who? To the risk manager, to the person either internally or externally who has said, my job is to ensure that the identities are provisioned correctly. And I'll show you how simple this is. I'm just going to start with an audit. And we literally, Ashley has got accounts. We started at 8 in the morning. We got them online and running the first audit by 3 p.m. Okay, so let's create a source. We've got a bunch of connectors. This one's going to Azure AD, and I'll just call this ISC squared finance 01. It's after 6 p.m. Don't mind the spelling. Okay, and there you go.
You
And
know
now
you can't spell in the middle of the day.
I can't spell anywhere. So here's the concept of the product: is there's data. There's great data out there, guys. There's data in these identity store records. Let's pull the metadata over to YouAttest. Okay. I don't need the credentials. I don't need to take stuff like that. Don't want to be one source to be hacked. I don't want to be SolarWinds. But let me pull the data, the metadata. Okay, and I'm going to just have this risk manager choose this finance app. If I want to have fun, I can do a percentage, just 5–10%. But this one's small because it's a demo. Okay, now what it's doing is I'm grinding. Really important what I'm going to be showing in my demo and et cetera is what it's doing is pulling data up to the risk manager. But the risk manager himself, what he's going to be doing is utilizing that information, and then he can go entity to entity, or what he can do is go and say, hey, you know what I'd rather do? I'd rather just do an auto delegation. So let's do that. I'm going to go into the report here. Here's users and managers. Now, this is, I have to repeat again, there's nothing wrong with this, but this is the risk manager himself shouldn't be doing any reviewing. What we train, and they do, is they hit this field called auto delegate. And this does what the very intelligent manager of that large account with all the users did. It auto delegates. It pushes out the reviews out to the end users. Okay, and my guess is it's 8:40 because if I show you my other screen, look at that. I know how to use GoToMeeting. A delegation email went to this individual called YA Manager. Once again,
Nice.
named after my wife. There you go. So good. So
No, I like that because that's such a it's such a traceable piece of evidence. You know, that's in the email store.
yeah,
And there's no refuting it.
yeah, and now this manager literally just clicks this and sees a subset. Of all the users in the application.
So that would work with any MAPI compliant product.
Yeah. What the whole concept is, and this is why we have a lot of directions from our customers. Is you got 1,900 reviewers. Garret, give me a way of pushing out simply what that reviewer has to be reviewing, and the product, of course, will then automatically nag them with reminders and all this. So
I'm going to ask you some questions because you know, some of the people who have sponsored and who are part of this community, we have people who work at CyberArk, we have people who work at Okta, and we had a great partner, CloudKnox. And the thing is, we have a lot of
there because Okta helped us a lot with this product. They were very.
I'm just saying we have a lot of partners who are helping us to see, you know, threats, to see malicious actors coming across the wide area network. But tonight we're looking at something that is it's a different perspective. It's the risk manager. It's the reporting piece.
Yes.
Even if we have Okta, even if we have a good AD implementation, even if we have CyberArk running and we can see everything, we still don't have this last mile down. And that's what I was saying. Even with, I have a lot of skills in this domain, but I still spend days every quarter. You know, did we add resources? Did the managers change? There's still a lot of manual tracking things down to do a good job.
Yeah. And I think it's only going to get worse. Sorry for interrupting. You know,
put your face up, Craig.
You know, as the account,
be the heads now. Come back and talk.
as the accounts are sprawling, right? Because now suddenly you've got an account for every application, and you've got users within each of those accounts, and you've got these across dev, prod, QA. It's becoming extremely difficult to, as this scales, to keep this kind of control in place. So a lot of times we find that there's a lot of tools out there that'll go and have a look like, oh, your account hasn't been used, and then it'll either delete it or it'll stop it using, but it causes production impact at times. This is a far more clean way of doing it.
Thanks, Greg. And that's literally great products. Let me just throw out something because it's just feel like I'm that kind of mood, and I've been enjoying this session so much. I'm a product inventor, and people go, Garret, where do you get your ideas? And I go, what I do is I look at what the SIs are doing because they do great work, and then I try to productize it. Okay, I mean, sue me or whatever, but I look at the work you define, what you were just saying there, Craig, is that this work is being done. It's being done really well by big SI firms. They got great practices, procedures on this. The actual functionality needs to be democratized. It needs to be given to all companies because the supply chain is being hacked because the smaller firms don't have the tools to put in the right controls. And that's what this product is.
You know, I'm going to raise this again and again. Guys, I'm the hammer. Deal with it. There are a lot of small companies out there using Microsoft Office 365 and chaining together lots and lots of cloud applications, and they're too small. They're just slipping through the cracks. And when you hear something like 40% of the internet traffic is bot, and it may be higher.
Yeah.
And then add to that, okay, that's it. That's when you look at the enterprise level. But what about what percentage of the world that's out there are small companies? You know, companies with fewer than 75 employees that nobody's looking at. So how about those small companies? Would a small company be able to use this product?
They do, absolutely. Like I say, Ashley gets them running in a day. We'll hook them up and all that. You just mentioned identities are identities. It's really, I mean, you and I can talk, like I said, across the table, and it is. I was on a meeting today, and they're like, so Garret, you talk about identity hacking. What are you talking about? Because they're from a really small company. I go, it is the identities that we're using a word that you're putting in your directory to give access to your applications. You literally are better at I told them you're better at putting those in than you are knowing what you have access to and what you get permission. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I know. We are better at putting things in than understanding what we've put in. And I go, yeah, and that goes up to, and I believe this space, the problem space here is really all the way up to, and we've seen in Ashley and I and the other team members, about 5,000 users. Just the tools for us just aren't there. So,
and one last thing I just wanted to say is, just talking to hundreds of candidates and information security consultants, what's interesting is that there's this, the lines being blurred, and I don't know why, between zero trust and segregations of duty. And they don't properly implement segregations of duty. So the policies, they think by implementing proper zero trust, you by default get segregation of duty, and that's not always the case.
That's a really good one, Craig. That's one of the funnier ones I've heard. But I can see, having done this industry long enough, how people, and you're probably in the third row, listen to someone say something, and you're like, wow, that's kind of hurting my brain.
Exactly. And it's fun, yeah.
Let me say, I'm having built products on both sides. I'm like, okay, just to reiterate for the audience, zero trust is a wonderful concept, started by Google and their AntiCorp, and then Forrester helped promote in that slide and going out there saying, what we have to do is reestablish identities at each point of the solution. And I meant to be vague there because it started as a network, but I think it's much more in each part of the mechanism. I don't care if that's a web or a data, we have to reestablish the identity. Segregation of duties is the concept that, Garret, you're good at provisioning users. You provision this guy, Bob, as a sales guy, and you also provision him to be in the finance group. And guess what he's doing? He just augmented his commission from 5 to 40%. You know, that's
Or approved 65% discounts.
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's segregation of duty, and that's where you have to see it. And once again, when we took advice from us is V1 and V2. The product is the V1 was Garret. Give me that information and get that down to my managers. They know what they should have access to.
So I'm doing a layup question. One of the big issues that we face is getting the business teams together to truly break out what are all of the different types of access and the different groups that they have across their software development, across the DevOps team, and getting that visual picture where you can say, this is a business manager, and these are all the groups, these are all the people. Do you have, can you go back to the dashboard? Do you have something that reflects looking at the business in terms of the groups that they own and the silos that they represent?
Yeah, we could do, I'm going to hit certify right here because that's what this user does, because then I can go there. Now, take our brains, and we are done with being YA manager. We're going to go back into being the actual auditor, okay? So what we do is, our product is designed with the concept of the risk manager running attestation campaigns. So what you do is you decide what is the resource I'm using, and then you decide what type of review you want to do. Do I want to do an app review, a group review, or a user audit? And that's how we design these attestation reports.
Is this also used by the security department? You know, if somebody says,
Oh yeah, yeah. We're talking.
Fire somebody, and we want to put a trail on them for a little while and see what they're doing.
Okay, what is we designed something for the compliance team and one customer, and two of our CISOs love it. We call it state and time auditing, where we grab all the information and the roles from a resource, right? And then what we do is, whenever you choose, 15, 30, 60, 90 days, do another snapshot and then compare and say, okay, I don't understand. Here's my list of the people that I fired, and they still have, this hasn't changed, or this has changed. State and time auditing saves our companies using that feature. They say literally 80% of their time in going through to show to the auditor what has been changed, but also relevantly to the security person to make sure that changes have been put in place.
It's 8:51.
Yeah.
People who have been quiet for a long time, say something so our systems have a record that you're really still here and you're not watching Thursday night TV. Ask a question. Come on, jiggle that mouse.
It's the kickoff.
By the way, I want you to know, because we all really know each other. We all know where each other works. Right. And so it's a touchy topic for us to just jump in and share war stories, because this is a recorded meeting.
Robin,
when you talk about what are the things that you're not allowed to say,
I'm very careful of that. So.
No, but yeah, I just wanted to make that point amongst us, because we're all absolutely here. Okay, I got a couple of questions. I've got a Lawrence Sang question and a Susan Esposito question. First off, Lawrence says, thanks for the presentation, with an exclamation. I know why he's happy with it. We're all happy with this, because look at what we were examining with replays. All of this information, and we know so much about the security of the company, but we really don't have that interface that tells us that we can trust the people who have access to that intel.
I love that.
So we are constantly, as security professionals, creating highly sensitive, top secret information, but we don't necessarily put an equal amount of time to review of the people who are handling that information. So anyway, Lawrence says,
that's what I say. The disparity right now, our ability to provide access is surpassed our ability to review what access has been granted.
Absolutely.
Because, and it's not putting down the tools, they've gotten really good. I created an SSO two-factor product from scratch called Secure. Started that thing back in 2007. And I, rode the hell out of that and got instant provision and all that. And I
Okay, now everybody's just slamming with comments and questions. If you were in the room, it would be very noisy. Okay. Susan Esposito, again, seasoned CISO, somebody who's owned her own risk management company. And we all know the answer to this, but it's going to give you a chance to say it. Do you in any way query or validate with AD, Azure AD, LDAP, Okta, other authentication systems?
That's my standard demo. That's what I was showing.
Yep,
yes,
all of it.
The record is all the above. Yes.
Yes. Venki, one of our winners. So periodically we have competitions, and there are a couple of people who are on tonight, Lubomir, Venki, who, when we did hackathons, blew us all away, scared us with their talents. Could you provide an example of how this tool would catch overly permissive access? And yeah, of course you want to do that. Susan Esposito said, great quote. And Gary Delina, who is it's sort of, I want to call him our founding member, but I think maybe he was the fourth member of this chapter, is our financial director, most trusted, most respected. He says, thanks for the very relevant topics. I presently spend 10% of every week on these two activities. And so,
wow.
Yeah, and I was saying it too, I with 22 days a month at a client site, it was easily 3 to 5 days of that 22 days were spent in some capacity doing this work. So anyway, going back to
and let me say, having built products in AI, built product in two-factor, built in SSO, there is no more loyal customer than the risk managers that Ashley manages, because they greatly appreciate what we've done to their lives, and that they're actually accomplishing the roles that they told their managers they were doing. And it's not like they were lying, it's just that there was no way to do it. And let me address the hackathon one. Okay, what is and when I compliment our friends over at Okta here, one of the implementations we did early on is we got it integrated into Okta, and we're doing the access reviews, and then we did these things called the access requests, rock and roll. That's PRAC-1. What we said, and our customer said is, hey, can you alert us when a privilege escalation occurs? Okay, so that we can do two things. One, be more secure, and two, save GADs. That's a definition term. Looked it up, of hours for when the auditor says, I want to see every person that it has been changed up from user to an admin, or every account, and then I want to see the attestation of who and why that was approved. That's a lot of emails and diggings. And so what we did is we put in webhooks into the Okta product that it could be triggered on anything. There's like 45 different events that could be triggered on. But what most people do is do it every privilege on privilege escalation, e.g. standard, cyber kill chain stuff. So that's the type of stuff that takes this product not only and makes it a friend of the compliance people, because they don't have to dig through emails and change tickets, and they can just look at our reports and print those out every 90 days. But they also, it makes it a security tool that we start watching and monitoring the events. And since we all can agree on this count that the new frontier is identity, and identity privileges, changes in identity are as much as a change in a firewall rule or anything else.
We only have 2 minutes, and so I want to make sure that the last 2 minutes are spent thanking you and connecting people to who you are and how to reach out.
Yeah, so let's so it's youattest.com, and for the record, everyone, that is not my wife's name. That was just a great name of someone that came up with this and said, Garret, that's what you should call it, because he saw the product, saw the demo, and that was it. So just write us at info@youattest.com and we'll reply.
Okay. And how long has the company existed?
2.5 years. We were completely stealth for 6 months, and I was doing nothing but API work because the foundation of this problem is to quickly integrate into the identity stores. That was a great question of that person, and then give a meta view for the risk manager. So the only time you have to talk to the IM people is for about 4 minutes where you get your OIDC or your SAML connection, and then from there you're off to the races.
I have one more question. This is from Neil Meyer. Are you able to integrate to network vendors?
Absolutely. So what we just did is a rewrite of the product to scale to 7 figures, and what we also did is open up the APIs. And the whole concept of YouAttest for 2023 is to take this beyond simple just identity. Identity was the beginning. That's why we didn't call it ID YouAttest. It's just YouAttest, and to start attesting to changes in other security apparatuses.
Good. Is there a question that you have for us? ISC squared East Bay.
No. All the thing would be is in 3 months, why don't we do it again?
I would love to have you join us. There, you know, we had the director of education kicking off, talking about putting out trainings. And if you would be so kind as to come back and do a lunch and learn, or the subject matter expert when we are doing CISSP identity access domain, you know, preparing people for their CISSP. There's absolutely nothing in this product or your expertise that wouldn't be relevant to the exam.
There you go. Absolutely. Love it and help people out. Took my, one of the few people that passed the CISSP twice because I forgot to get my credits and put them in.
I bet it wasn't that hard for you.
Oh, it was fine. It was fine. It's all good. In fact,
and I hope it's okay with you if we just automatically invite you to our events going forward.
Please, by all means.
So thank you so much. We really appreciated that you reached out and you did the do good thing. That's the reason that tonight we put enough money in the bank to invite 1 or 2 people to ask us for assistance when they take advantage of the CISSP, the new training that's out for 1 million new cyber professionals. And we just really appreciate that you support us.
Absolutely. A great cause, a great industry. Let's help each other. That's basically the way I look at it, right?
Absolutely.